Hi, I'm John F. Allen.
And I'm RJ Sullivan.
And we're the Two Towers.
This is part 2 of the Two Towers review of Castlevania.
Well, to speak on that, I think one of the reasons that the idea of Dracula taking Lisa to be his wife worked, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, I'm going to say why it worked for me, was on the strength of the writing, but also the strength of the voice actors who made this character come alive, but also the writing in the sense that this Lisa was not scared of Dracula. She came into this castle and he's like, "What are you doing here?" And he even said, "Well, don't I frighten you?" And she's like, "No, of course not. You don't frighten me. I know who you are. I know what you want."
Right.
And I mean, she just came in, and this was something that fascinated Dracula, and you could see by the animated cells how they illustrated his reactions and the way that he moved around her and how she moved around him, that this was something that he was not used to. And I think that's one of the most endearing things. And then from that point, he was so fascinated by her. And then he started to look at her beauty. And then he said, he didn't say this out loud, but you could kind of, if you're watching the show, and you could see these things turning in his head with the way that this was animated and the voice actor, how he said things. He was taken aback by her, and he immediately was stricken by her in a way that he had never been stricken by anyone before. This woman was the package, is pretty much what happened. And he was like, "Oh yeah, this is my woman. She is just, she's tenacious. I love it." I mean, he stepped out of himself, and you could see why, and you could actually see it happening, which is one of the things I think made it sellable.
Well, here's the thing. In fact, I would flip that. If they could not make that part work, the entire series doesn't work.
Right, I agree.
Yeah.
I'm just saying that when they sold it, and they sold it well, and they did it, and they did it in a way that it transcended not just the writing or the dialogue, but also the way that the characters were animated in the cells and the voice acting. All of those things played a crucial role in selling it.
Mm-hmm.
If one was out of sync, then it would have been like a house of cards, in my opinion. It just would have all fallen down.
They did it with a very limited time.
Yes.
I mean, they didn't take like 3 or 4 episodes to establish this. They did it in like a couple scenes.
Right.
Like, we got to move on. This is just a setup. And yet they managed to take on some things, sell them to where you're on board, and do it very quickly. I was very impressed with that.
Right. And they sold Dracula's neuroses very well too. And it had a lot to do with the mythology of the character, but it also had a lot to do with themes that are relatable to us as humans, which first and foremost is love, but also revenge. But also, I've got an idea on how I can make things better, and a belief in that, no matter how far off or crazy or misguided it is, it's something that is very human. And that is what sells you on this. It also humanizes Dracula enough to have you at times kind of rooting for him in the background to a certain extent. You know, you're not even rooting for him so much as you have empathy for his plight and his state of mind and why he is who he is when he is. And that in and of itself gives the character a lot more dimension, and it sells the character's mission, as misguided as it is, to the viewer, in my opinion. So that being said about Dracula and Lisa Tepish, let's go into a little brief look at the characters. First of all, Trevor Belmont, he's the last living member of the Belmont clan, and they were basically excommunicated family of monster hunters. So they've been hunting monsters forever, and he's the last of them. And he's not necessarily superhuman, but he has been trained to fight at a level that is like peak performance, you know, like almost like a Batman type of thing, if you will. And he has a particular weapon, which is like a whip sword. It's like a long, elongated sword whip type weapon, and it's a chain with a blade on the end, and he whips that thing around, and it is fabulous. He wields it very well. It's very much a part of him, and that weapon in and of itself, I think, was made to be able to destroy monster demonic beings on contact, and so he has some mystical elements to himself, but he's not like a sorcerer or anything like that. You have Sypha, who is a speaker magician, and she is the elder's granddaughter. She wields elemental magic, so basically she can conjure magic that has to do with the elements, earth, wind, fire, you know, that type of thing. And you have Alucard Tepish, who he's a Damphir, which a Damphir is a hybrid of human vampire. And he is the son of Dracula and Lisa. And he mourns his mother just as Dracula mourns her. But he sees his father's gone off the deep end, and he's struggling with the fact that he knows he loves his father, and his father loves him. See, that's the thing, the dynamic. The first thing I said was love. It's very well written in that sense. You get that this was a family at one point, and you know, but Alucard knows his father's gone off the deep end, and he knows what's going to have to happen. He's going to have to stop.
Right. And there's a certain question. He joins the good guys, but you're not sure about him for quite a while into the show. He almost gets killed by Trevor early on. And you're not sure that that's necessarily a good thing or a bad thing when they opt not to slay him. And I like the dynamic. I'm gonna cover a couple things quickly. Trevor Belmont, Sypha Belnades, and Alucard are a lot of fun together. They have a lot of scenes together early on where they're trying to figure out how to stop Dracula. Trevor Belmont, again, coming in, just taking the show at face value, had a lot of the Clint Eastwood man with no name, good, the bad, and the ugly kind of a vibe to it. A lot like Star Wars Mandalorian. When you first meet him, he's a man who his family has been destroyed by the society. He used to be well thought of, but now he just kind of wants to disappear and hope that nobody recognizes who he is. He no longer cares about what's going on or the things going on around him. And as this trope is played out so many times, he kind of gets to a point where he can't help himself, and he re-engages, and that's kind of where you see his arc come around to finding himself and getting re-engaged with doing the right thing versus just being a mercenary. I can't say enough good things about Sypha. I love her character. She's amazing. She's kind of basically Trevor goes to save her life early on, and then when he's accomplished that, she decides, instead of going back to the speakers, that she's going to help him and join his mission. And those two together it's just fireworks. It's just so much fun to watch them work together because she understands him and he comes to understand her. And by the time you're into the third season, you just feel like anything they try to do, they're just gonna get in there and take care of business every time. And they've got the banter and the fun, and they're very powerful. They support each other very well. Eventually they do form a relationship, and you're absolutely rooting for that relationship. And I really love that aspect of those characters.
Yes, I concur. I think that they work very well together. There's very much a chemistry and dynamic between these characters, both as how they're illustrated and also the voice talents. You They sell it, and if you closed your eyes and you just listen to them, they sell it. They
Yeah, they
sell
do.
it. They sell it
Absolutely.
in spades, and the characters in and of themselves are very dynamic, and like we said before, you get a show with all three of them roaming around fighting other monsters or whatnot, and it's gonna be watched. People would love it. I know we would. So there's
Hmm.
that.
Yeah.
I want to go into a couple more characters. You mentioned earlier, RJ, the couple of characters that you were wanting to find their humanity, and I'm pretty sure I know who exactly you were talking about. But just to fill people in, Dracula, amongst his most trusted minions, has two devil forge masters. So let me explain briefly what a devil forge master is. A devil forge master is a human who is trained in the dark arts and has the ability to create and forge demonic and wicked creatures from the corpses of humans. So basically, they can reanimate humans and call forth demons to inhabit the flesh of these humans and create these monsters. So these demonic creatures. So just so it gives you a little bit of background, there were two of them. There was Hector and Isaac, and that is who you were referring to, was it not?
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
I think it's important to mention that they're aware Dracula's plan is to destroy humanity, and they're both human beings. It's not, it doesn't escape their notice that I wonder what Dracula's going to do to us after he's completed his plans, and yet they seem on board. I don't want to get too much in the spoiler territory, but they both have a history that kind of helps explain that and why they're loyal to Dracula, and I really love that. It's a depth you don't normally see with secondary and tertiary characters, um, where they come with their own backstories and they seem to be working against their own best interest at times, and yet you can still buy into it.
Yes, and let's just also look at the fact that that's reciprocal.
Mhm.
So you would think of, you know, Dracula being, he wants to wipe out humanity and he doesn't care. And he'll use anyone to achieve his goals. But these two, and Isaac in particular, and I'm not going to go into why, but Isaac in particular, he Dracula loves them. He has a love
Mhm.
for them, and it goes beyond, oh, you guys just work for me. And he told them, all of humanity's got to go, but you two, no,
Yep.
I need you to be here with me. And Dracula has a dependence on these two characters, and he's closest with Isaac. And Isaac was a character that I really enjoyed. I enjoyed why he was so fiercely loyal to Dracula, and how the things in his life and his history shaped his hatred for humanity. And I could relate to it.
Yeah.
And I will mention this fact. Isaac is black, and Isaac is someone who went through some things with regards to other people in his history that's shown in flashbacks that will get you to understand why he is who he is. And being a black man, I kind of can relate to that on a level that may be different from other people. So let's just put that out there like that. I think that those characters in and of themselves could have their own show. I mean, as we alluded to before, a lot of these characters are so well developed and they're so interesting that you want to see them above and beyond outside of Castlevania, maybe even in their own series.
Mm-hmm.
So, and these are two that are definitely fit that mold. And I also want to mention the Council Sisters, which is basically the female vampire queens that RJ spoke of earlier. Mm-hmm. We have Lenore. She's like a diplomat member. We have Morana. She is a strategist member. We have Striga. She is the military member of the Council of Sisters. And so you have...
And Carmilla.
Yeah, and Carmilla. She is basically the head of them. She is the one that's pulling the strings and leading the charge. And she is very, very devious and self-serving and all those things that make her a great antagonist.
So coming back to Hector and Isaac, I will, without repeating myself too much, they are presented as being on the side of villainy, but I've never stopped rooting for them to find their humanity. I hope that, before the story is out, that they, there are hints that they can be redeemed. And so I'm very much engaged in seeing how their stories play out. Carmilla is just great fun as a villain. When I talk about characters that you feel like may have been a boss in one of the video games, she is one of those. Lenore is the most surprising. I find the layers to Lenore quite interesting. Wow, I don't know if I want to get too much into why, but right. I found the way her story went surprised me it several times. I find her motivation's a bit mysterious. I'm really interested in what she's up to, and I'm curious to find out more. The other two they kind of had a role to play. There's not as much there for them. So, but Carmilla and Lenore, again, for tertiary characters, there's a lot there to dig into. Right, and a spin-off series with them, including the other two who, as RJ had said, Morana and Striga, who aren't utilized as well or as often. This would be a wonderful segue to see a lot more into who those characters are. I mean, it would work. Yeah, so, I agree. That being said, this series has a lot of potential to live beyond itself and spin off into other series. And I would love to see that happen. I don't know if it is, but I would love to see that happen. And two other characters that we should probably mention are Taka and Sumi. Mm-hmm. They come around in season 3, and they are vampire hunters from Japan. And they're young. They're brother and sister, and they're very young. I mean, they're like in their teens. They approach Alucard and want him to train them. And okay, let's take a moment to just make this disclaimer again. This is an adult anime. This is not for children. I would be hard pressed if you aren't in high school. You really probably don't have any business watching this at all. And if you are in high school and not a junior or senior, you probably should be asking your parents first. I'm going to interject here, John. So I'm watching this. My youngest child is 15, and I feel like he's old enough to watch this.
Right, that's what I was getting at.
So, but my point is, we're watching it, and every time the disclaimer comes on, it's gore, violence, nudity, and sex. And I was joking after so many episodes. I'm like, come on now, where's the sex? We've had everything else, right? We eventually get to a point where we get the sex. And, it was kind of funny. But it's of the three, you get lots of gore. You get lots of violence. There's a bit of nudity. And, sex.
And foul language.
Oh, yeah, lots of language. I don't remember that was I don't remember that being mentioned. It probably was. It should have been if it wasn't. There is a lot of language. But I mean, that was kind of the running joke because there's a while before that part happens, and it does involve these two. And that was kind of our giggle while we were watching the show. Oh, here we go.
Right. And I didn't mean to say that to infer that there's a lot of sex in this, but
No, there really isn't. But
there really isn't. But there's enough to where if you aren't like in your mid-teens, you probably don't really need that in your life at this point.
Yeah, if it's a concern, yeah, parental concern. If that is one, it is there.
Right.
I mean, honestly, I've always made the joke. I find it funny that the most beautiful thing and the most horrible thing are both reasons for things to be rated R. But that's just the reality. If you're a parent and you think you may have some concerns, yes, all the concerns are there for this show, and you should wait till your kids are older before you watch it. And that's what those parental guides are there for, and they definitely apply to this show. Anyway, go on.
Exactly. And so I bring that all up to say that when the characters of Taka and Sumi are introduced and they are taken on by Alucard to be his proteges.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, they're brother and sister, but these two kids are freaks. Let's just get address the elephant in the room, put the cards on the table. They are freaks.
Yep.
And they both are sleeping with Alucard. This is like a menage a trois situation. It's
okay. We're going there. All right.
Yeah. I mean, this show isn't for kids who are really under the age of someone who might want to watch this series. So, it's not for little kids anyway, but let's just put it out there. So anyway, yeah, and it's some crazy stuff, but I'm not going to spoil anything for you. You have to see it for yourself, and how this all plays out is very, very interesting. I bring these characters up because of their relevance in season 3, but also because when they were first introduced, I actually was like, I like these two. I really would like to see more of these characters and where they're going and all of that. And you'll see how that all plays out, and as you watch the show, and
I'll just add, the Japanese culture is something I find fascinating. If you look at your 3 nerdy centers of the world, there's the U.S., there's England, and there's Japan, and it's a very different kind of a nerd culture,
right,
than the United States, and so they have a background and a history with a vampire who's very different from the way vampires are presented in the rest of the series.
Yes.
And I found that aspect really neat. I enjoyed that part. It's not a lengthy part. It's a bit of a flashback, but I thought that was a really cool backstory that they were given.
Yes. And I think that when it comes down to the sexuality in this particular series, it's very Japanese. And that's not meant to be a slight. That's meant to, if you're a fan of anime, you'll know that Japanese anime has a lot of sexual overtones to it. And you see it. I mean, it is what it is. And, Ghost in the Shell, I mean, you don't need me to give you a list of this. If you watched anime, you know what I'm talking about. And
just don't say we didn't warn you if you check it out.
Right. This is very much in line with that. So I just wanted to get that out. Pretty much, I want to, before we wrap things up, to really, again, talk about how well this production came together and what it means to me as a viewer, a fan, and a creator. So I want to speak on this, and then afterwards, if RJ has anything to say, he can address it. But as a fan of anime and animated films and Japanese anime and video games with these themes, and Dracula, all of that. I have to say that they did an excellent job. Now, as RJ had said before, nailing Dracula seems to be very hard to do for people for some reason, and they really did it well. And they gave you protagonists who you really want to stick with and you want to see more of, and that in and of itself it's a win-win. Beyond the production value, such as the artwork and the voice acting and the direction and all of that. So as a fan, that's excellent. As a viewer, it is something to behold. It is something that is larger than life. We have in my house a 65-inch television. It's a Sony and it's high def, and it's wonderful. It's our little baby, yes.
You gotta have me over when you can, John.
Oh yeah, most definitely. But watching it on that screen was amazing in and of itself. It was almost like being in a movie theater to see it. And then, so with that being said, I think that you can't go wrong with this show. And from a viewer standpoint, it has all the aesthetics that make it something beautiful to behold. And as a creator, lastly, this series is all inspiring. I watched this series, and let's be real. We all like to think that everything that we do is original and springs forth from our imaginations unhindered and so forth and all that. Well, that's a crop. Basically, you are a product of your environment. Everything you see, hear, touch, taste, all of that plays a part in what you can or cannot imagine and helps to set in motion your imagination. Because if you were isolated from all stimuli, you would have no imagination because you would have nothing to base it off of. That's just a fact. So that being said, from a creator's perspective, you don't know how many stories were spawned in the back of my mind after watching these 3 seasons of this show. I've got so many story ideas that I don't even know if I'm going to be able to write them all. And while they're borrowed, some of the elements are borrowed from the series, they are original in the sense that they're my characters. They face similar but very different circumstances and situations and all that. But this series is inspiring on a creative level that I can't give enough kudos to. So,
okay.
Yeah.
All right. So I'll just add, I'm tackling my own vampire project. It's tied to my paranormal series. Vampires are a well-mined topic now. They have been for a long time. And so it's kind of hard to come up with your own original slant. That said, I feel like people kind of gave up on them for a while, and I'm not sure why, because Castlevania showed there's so much more you can still do with them. And even though we borrowed a little bit from this and a little bit from that, and we adapted it from a video game, they still managed to come up with something original with Dracula, and yet still respect the property and the mythos, and it can still be done. They can still figure it out, and there's still quality to be mined out there with this idea of what the vampire is, the idea of something that's kind of lived beyond its time and is kind of literally just surviving and beyond the off of the rest of society and off of humanity. And how does that apply to real life? And I can go on and on and on about it. But the fact is, I've never gotten tired of it. I think that there's still so many original stories to tell, and I'm eternally frustrated that so many people have not figured it out and botch it so badly. So I basically watched all of Castlevania here in the last couple of weeks, having seen the recommendations, and I'm kind of frustrated that it is so good, and yet I'm so late to the game on this one. I wish someone had clued me in a lot sooner, because it is, for a vampire fan and for a Dracula fan, this was everything I've been kind of hoping someone would finally make, and now here it is, and we're in the middle of it.
Yes. And I apologize for that, RJ. I'm sorry that I didn't.
Well, you're not personally responsible for all my recommendations.
Right. But
Yeah.
to my credit, when it came onto my radar, okay, so I knew about Castlevania for a while from the video game,
Sure.
but when the show came onto my radar, it was right before season 3 was released.
Yeah,
So I wasn't going to obviously recommend anything to you until I'd actually seen it or
sure.
whatnot. So
That was very recently, right? I mean,
right, exactly. So
today
it
is
was-
May 24th, and it came out, what, in March or April?
Right. And so that all being said, that was let's see, we've got season 3 was released. The first episode was released. Oh, well, all of them were released on March 5th of this year, 2020. So basically, this happened during the COVID-19 shutdown. I had all this time on my hands, and so I binge watched a whole lot of television. And this was one of the things that came on my radar, because I'd been hearing some things from my peers on Facebook about it. And I said, let me check this out. And so I checked it out. And when I did, I was blown away. And then my first thought was, I need to let RJ know. And I did. And I had you in mind. You know, I have you in mind with a lot of things because we have similar taste. And this was one thing where I knew that you were a big Dracula fan. And I was like, he's going to really dig this show. And I knew why you were going to dig it, and that just made it even better. So
Yep. You were right. You called it, man.
That being said, let's end this. I'm going to give you my rating, but first, I'm going to say that the average thermometer for Rotten Tomatoes for this series is 93%.
Mm-hmm.
Average audience score is 88%. So looking at this, the top critics are basically at 100% on the thermometer and average audience score 88%. I wanted to bring this up because first let me say that Rotten Tomatoes does not affect or gauge whether or not I watch something or whether or not I like something. I like it on its own merit. There are a lot of things that they recommend that I tried that I absolutely just thought was rubbish, trash, garbage, get this out of here. And there were things that they gave very low scores to that I found to be classic and to be of very high value. So when I mention Rotten Tomatoes, I'm not using this as a gauge for my own score, but I just wanted to use it to show that there are a lot of people out there who are excited about this series and have
it's always nice when you're in sync with the culture. And,
right, yeah. And but if anybody knows me, I was born to be a rebel. But that being said, I will give this show, drum roll, 5 towers. And this doesn't happen all the time. There are, I think there are 3 other animes who get 5 towers from me for various reasons. And we'll explore those later on when we talk about animes in a show, whenever that is. But this is in the top 5 for me of all time, and it gets 5 towers for me.
All right. I'm going to come at this a little bit differently. I don't feel well versed enough in anime to rank it as anime. I'm just not well versed on a lot of the anime shows. My best friend is. You are. I'm not, but I will talk about it in the realm that I can talk about it, which is as a Dracula fan. Now I just watched Castlevania recently, so it's my opinion on this may change a bit, but I would definitely put it in my top 3 right now of Dracula anythings. You know what I'm saying? Like books, comics, movies, lots of movies that I would rank very low out there. But I would put this in my top 3. If you are just a Dracula fan, if you're looking for that next cool Dracula thing, this is one of the best interpretations of the character and the mythos out there. Easily. So it is a story in progress, and anything can fall on its face at the end. But right now, I'm giving it 4.5, and I'll explain the half a point. And that has to do with the fact that season 3 is 10 episodes, and as we were watching it a couple a night, starts off strong. Second act is strong. You get to the 3rd season, which is the lengthiest one. It dragged just a little bit. You were kind of waiting on things for quite a while. There were lots of scenes of people in a room talking, and not a whole lot happens for a bit. I thought a bit longer than I would have preferred. I did get a little impatient with it. That said, part of my impatience is because I was so engaged earlier on, and I was so excited to see where they were taking it. And so I was like, come on, let's go. Let's make it happen. And then it paid off. You got toward the end, everything starts to come together, and it does end strongly. Now, it doesn't end completely. There's more story to go. But it did deliver when it delivered. I just felt like they left me hanging a bit longer. Now, maybe some people would look at that and say, well, that should be a good thing. There's a fine line. I thought it got a little long for a little bit, and I just wish that were just a bit shorter. As the only thing that I can point to where I would say I got to take a half point off for that. But I mean, this is not only a recommendation. This is a very strong recommendation. This is one of the best things I've seen as a Dracula fan. I would say at least the last 15 years. So there you go.
Yes, and I concur. Although I didn't take the half point off, I do believe that the 3rd season was lengthy. It didn't bother me as much as it did RJ, but it was a concern. And I think that when it comes to series such as this, when you have a 5 to 7 episode length season, I think that's good enough. I think that's where you should that's a sweet spot, as it were. And I think that that's where they should have kept it. But because it was one of the best things, Dracula centric or anime in general, that I've seen in such a long time, that's why it got the full 5 towers from me. So,
yep. And that's fair. That's totally fair.
And at the end of the day, kids, we both highly recommend this. So if you haven't already, go out and watch it. And I would encourage you, and we really want to hear from you guys, our viewers. So please go ahead and make your comments about the show.
I have a specific comment I'd like. Those who are well versed in the game, who have also seen the series, pipe up, because I would like to know, should I be checking these games out? Am I going to have things spoiled? How do they compare? How to someone who knows the games well, or has a history of the games? I'd love to hear those comments. I'd like to know a bit more about the game side of this.
Yes, definitely. For fans of the anime, for fans of the game, for our general viewers, please let us know what you think. Let us know how you feel. Go out and check this out. We really would love to hear from you. Please give this episode a thumbs up if you liked it. And also be sure to subscribe to our channel for all of our videos, or our videos that we've already taped, and any new videos, upcoming videos that we have coming. And also make sure to check out our networking partners, Nerddom United. Our videos are going to be shown on, or available on their channel as well. So we want to make sure that we're giving them a shout out. They're definitely a company you want to watch, and we are more than grateful and to be affiliated with them. So if you want to reach out to me, see what's going on with me and all the things I got in the works, you can visit my website at johnfallenauthor.com. And where can they check you out, RJ?
I am at rjsullivanfiction.com. I have a follow tab on that website that gives you all the other ways to follow me, and that's just the easiest way to do it. And I think it's safe to say, John, that we're going to come back at season 4 and season 5 and update our opinions on this show as we go along here.
Absolutely, absolutely. And like I said before, we're going to probably be doing an anime show at some point. I can't tell you when, but be on the lookout for that. It'll be interesting for sure. So until next time, be safe out there. Thanks for tuning in. Again, be sure to subscribe, and we'll see you next time. Bye.
The Two Towers Talk Show is a network partner and partially sponsored by Nerddom United, a company whose goal is to create and provide materials for nerds around the world. They support all things nerdy, from anime, comics, gaming, manga, movies, TV, and more. Nerddom United's goal is to provide a platform for nerds to be involved with what they love and to create a safe space for nerds to passionately pursue and grow their creative endeavors. Be sure to check them out on Facebook and YouTube. Thanks.
The Two Towers Talk Show is sponsored in part by Showtime Cinema in Mooresville, Indiana. Their friendly staff is always willing to go the extra mile to make your movie-going experience an enjoyable and memorable one. Enjoy the comfort of their new cushioned seating in their spacious auditoriums, and while you're there, be sure to stop by the concession stand and purchase some popcorn where real butter topping is an option. They're located at 300 South Bridge Street in Mooresville, Indiana. We hope to see you at the movies.